They say your whole life can change in a single minute, but nobody ever tells you it might happen in front of 200 strangers, every one of them staring, holding their breath. One moment, I was clutching my boarding pass in first class, and the next, I heard the captain's voice thunder through the cabin, cold as ice. This flight is returning to the gate. Security officers will board. Just like that. My seat, my dignity, and even my innocence were ripped away. All because of one entitled man who thought people like me didn't belong. I'll never forget the vanilla scent of that first-class cabin, the soft golden lights, the hum of money and power in the air. My name is Riley Carter. I'm 11 years old, CEO and founder of BrightStart, a digital learning company changing the game for millions of students. Even if half the world still thinks I should be in middle school, not in boardrooms. That morning, my dad, Isaac Carter, walked me onto the flight from Detroit to San Francisco. We were headed for the biggest pitch of my life, hoping to secure a partnership that could open doors for thousands of kids. I'd always asked for window seat 1A, a tiny tradition that helped me feel less small in a world built for people older, whiter, and taller than me. But when we got to our row, someone was already there. An older white man, maybe late 50s, suit sharp enough to cut glass, hair salt and pepper, and a look that made my heart race with a mixture of fear and rage. He stared at me like I was gum stuck to his shoe. I tried to speak calmly, holding out my pass. "Excuse me, sir, I think you might be in my seat, 1A. He didn't even glance at my ticket. He smirked, lifted his chin, and said, "Young lady, this is first class, not a playground." The words were loud enough for everyone around us to hear. I could feel their eyes, curious, some amused, most just wishing I'd disappear so the plane could take off. I showed my pass to the flight attendant. She read it, nodded, and turned to the man, her voice polite but icy. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" He snapped open his wallet and thrust out a ticket for 14D, Economy Plus. His face flushed, but he doubled down. "I always sit here. I'm a platinum member. I'm not moving for a child." The humiliation burned through my skin. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to fight or run. I tried to stand tall, tried to hold on to the composure that saved me in boardrooms, science fairs, and TV interviews. But it felt so much smaller here, so much more personal. He was talking over me now. His words meant to cut deep. "You know nothing about the value of first class. It's wasted on someone your age." My dad stepped up, voice calm but steely. "That seat was paid for and assigned to my daughter. I won't ask again. Move!" The man, who I later learned was named Grant Taylor, just sneered. "People like you are always playing the victim. Maybe if you taught your daughter some manners, we wouldn't be in this situation." My hands started to shake, but I wouldn't let him see. I wasn't just fighting for a seat. I was fighting for the right to exist in a place where I was clearly unwanted. The flight attendant called the purser, who checked both tickets and told Mr. Taylor he'd need to move or be removed from the flight. He finally got up, slow and defiant, shooting me a look full of venom. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You and your little business. This isn't over." And just like that, he disappeared back toward the main cabin. But the taste of his threat lingered long after. I sank into my seat, trying to steady my breath. But the stares didn't stop. I could feel people making up stories in their heads. Maybe I really was some spoiled brat. Or maybe I'd cheated my way into this spot. I glanced at my dad, who squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't let him in your head. You earned this." But for the first time in a long time, I doubted myself. Was I really where I belonged? Was I bringing all this on myself by insisting I deserved a place in rooms like this? I thought about giving up, about asking my dad if we could just get off the flight and let them have their way. The weight of 100 eyes was crushing me, and even the hum of the engines couldn't drown out my anxiety. That was when everything went from bad to surreal. Not 20 minutes after takeoff, the captain's voice cut through the cabin again, sharper this time. "We are returning to the gate. Please, remain seated." Panic fluttered through me. Passengers looked around, whispering. My dad's face went tight, a muscle in his jaw twitching. As soon as the plane landed, 2 uniformed officers came down the aisle. One of them looked straight at me and said, "Miss Carter, please come with us. There's a concern about the authenticity of your travel documents." For a split second, the whole world slowed down. I felt everyone's suspicion stick to me like static. My dad was up in an instant, his voice low but furious. "You have no right. My daughter's paperwork is in order." But the officers wouldn't budge. They led us off the plane, leaving a trail of silence behind us. We were ushered into a chilly side room at the airport. A woman in a dark suit introduced herself as Agent Lena Moore, FBI. She explained they'd received an urgent tip. A minor had boarded with fraudulent documents and might be part of a financial crime ring. She eyed me, then my father, then the thick file on her tablet. I felt myself shrinking by the second. I wanted to scream, to rage, but instead I handed over my binder, my official invite to the investment meeting, every document in perfect order. My dad's voice was brittle. "This is slander. Agent Moore, my daughter's worked for everything she's got. Someone is trying to sabotage her." Just then, the door swung open. Our attorney, Vivian Tran, swept in, out of breath but fierce. "I'm Vivian Tran, counsel for the Carter family and Bright Start. Agent Moore, the accusations you received are part of a campaign by Apex Tech. We have evidence, a whistleblower, and every internal email you need." She placed a folder and a USB on the table. The room went silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. Agent Moore raised an eyebrow, scrolling through the documents, then turned to a second woman who'd been standing quietly in the corner. The woman introduced herself as Evelyn Ford, a former executive at Apex Tech, who'd been gathering proof of their dirty tactics for months. I watched Grant Taylor's face flash across an email chain on Agent Moore's screen. He wasn't just a random passenger. He was a director at Pinnacle Systems, a subsidiary of Apex Tech. He'd tracked my schedule, targeted me on purpose, and called in the false report to destroy my credibility and my company. I wanted to feel triumphant, but honestly, all I felt was tired. The relief was cold, sharp, like stepping outside after a storm. Agent Moore looked at my father and me with new respect. "Thank you for your cooperation. We'll pursue this fully. You're free to go, and we apologize for the distress." We left the airport under a sky just beginning to glow with sunrise, my dad's hand never leaving my shoulder. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Back at the hotel that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with everything that had happened. The stares, the accusations, the way Grant Taylor's threat had stuck to my skin. I wondered if he would face any consequences, or if he'd just move on to the next target. Smug and untouchable. I didn't want to believe that someone could hurt me like that and just walk away. I got my answer sooner than expected. The next morning, as my dad and I waited outside the conference room at Summit Ventures, the investors I'd come all this way to meet, news alerts started pinging our phones. Apex Tech executives arrested in corporate sabotage scandal. Whistleblower reveals campaign against minority-led startups. I watched a shaky video of Grant Taylor, handcuffed, head down, being led away by FBI agents. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a look I can only describe as hollow, like he finally realized the world wasn't just his playground. I walked into that boardroom more nervous than ever. The partners at Summit Ventures had seen the headlines. Some looked at me with sympathy, some with renewed skepticism. The questions came fast and blunt. How do you know your company is secure? Why did Apex Tech target you? Can you really deliver at your age? But this time, I didn't shrink. I told the truth. I talked about resilience, about transparency, about building something not just for myself, but for every kid who's ever been told they don't belong. I saw faces change. Curiosity replaced skepticism. One by one, they nodded. At the end, the lead partner stood, shook my hand, and said, "You've just earned our full support. You have more guts than most grown founders I've met." We left the meeting to a cascade of congratulations, but I barely heard them. I was thinking about that moment on the plane, about Grant Taylor's face as the truth crashed down on him, the way he tried to hold on to his dignity and power, only to lose both in the cold, relentless light of justice. I never saw him again after that. Some people said he tried to save his reputation, but nobody cared anymore. His colleagues stopped returning his calls. His title meant nothing. He faded from the headlines. No apology, no redemption. Just the memory of a man who thought he could bend the world to his will, only to find out he was replaceable. All that remained was the silence he left behind. I didn't celebrate. There was no victory lap, no cathartic reunion. There was only a deep, quiet satisfaction in knowing I'd held my ground, and a subtle, defiant smile when I stepped onto my next flight, took my window seat, and watched the world drift by, just a little lighter. Some things you don't forgive. You outgrow them. That's what I learned, and that's the only way to win. This is Riley Carter, and you're watching JR.